One of the vital parts of UI end-to-end testing are timeouts. Randomness or apparent randomness is something that we need to deal with when testing UIs. The way WebdriverIO deals with that is that it has commands that essentially run in a loop, trying for example to locate an element or make an assertion until that command is successful or until it eventually fails. You can think of timeouts as upper limits. In other words, if the thing we want to happen happens within a timeout, the script continues. So how are timeouts different from hard waits? Hard waits or pauses stop the test execution altogether. Essentially, we are disconnected from the application under test, and the hope is that during this pause the application gets to a desired state. But this approach is flaky by design, because it's detached from what the application is doing. Timeouts, on the other hand, are a great way to stay connected to the application under test. And because they enable us to constantly check the state of application, they are faster. As with timeouts, we move on to the next command as soon as the condition is met. In WebdriverIO, there are different types of timeouts. Let's take a look at them in a real-life scenario. So I have an application that I want to test. It's a small game with 3 closed doors. These 3 doors open and reveal different characters. Some of them are enemies and some of them we should protect. Whenever we run this game, the time it takes for a character to appear is random. This poses a challenge for our test, but fortunately this is something that's handled pretty much automatically. We open the URL of our game, click on the Start Game button, and then wait for each door to be opened. So let's run this test. And we can now see that the test is passing. Even though it took a little while for our doors to open, our test was able to identify all of the 3 doors and has succeeded. And this is because our wait for displayed command will keep on retrying until it eventually finds the element. But how long does it wait? The answer to that can be found in our WebDriver config. The wait for timeout dictates how long we want to wait for all wait for commands. This includes stuff like wait for displayed, wait for clickable, wait for enabled, and so on. If we were to change this timeout, for example to 1 second, and run our test again, our test will fail. And this is because our element did not appear within 1 second. This timeout can be set globally in the WebdriverIO configuration, or we can make it granular by passing a timeout config just to a single command. When I run my test now, we are giving that timeout only for our 3rd door. And as we see, this can get a little bit tricky, because the time it took for the 3rd element to appear was longer than 1 second. So let's now take a look at another timeout that determines the length of the whole test. In this example, I'm again using wait for displayed commands. And normally my test should be passing. And on average, it takes about 12 seconds for it to finish. This is pretty decent, but let's say we are dealing with a longer test and we don't want it to run forever. For that, we can go back to our configuration and set up our Mocha options. Right now the timeout is set to 30 seconds, but if we want to set a lower threshold for our tests, we can do that by changing these options. When I run my test now, there's a high chance it will actually fail. Timeouts are a great way to set upper limits for something to happen in our tests. But you need to make sure that you don't set them up too high. The upper limit also means the time for your test to fail. So if you have multiple tests in your test suite that are going to fail, it's going to take a longer time for the whole test suite to finish. Happy testing, everyone!